Next logical step in efforts to build relations between the Biden administration and Chinese leaders. The presidents have talked by telephone. Senior leaders talked about political issues in Alaska in March. And now we have senior leaders talking about economic issues. This was an introductory virtual meeting. The important takeaway was that both sides want to talk about trade, even though they may disagree strongly in a variety of other areas. On the Chinese side, one important signal is that Liu He is still the lead negotiator, despite rumors that there might be a change. And I think that's positive and important because he has a very businesslike, pragmatic, and not an ideological approach to negotiating that could lead to progress. On the U.S. side, we learned that the U.S. side is conducting a trade policy review, but has not finalized its policy, which probably explains why there were no concrete outcomes out of these discussions. But there was a positive talk about future negotiations. We'll just have to wait and see.
So then as we then look at what happens as this new administration now picks up what was left of the Phase 1 trade deal, talk about the status of the U.S. tariffs against Chinese goods under the former Trump administration. How do you expect Biden and the USTR to really deal with those tariffs in the coming 6 to 12 months?
Well, the Phase 1 deal dealt with a variety of issues. It dealt with Chinese purchases. It dealt with some Chinese movement on policy issues. It did not include any commitments to relieve by the Trump administration to relieve the $360 billion in goods that would still be tariffed. So that is not covered by the Phase 1 deal. As we talk about going forward, however, the Chinese have expressed an interest in the U.S. reducing those tariffs. To me, the most interesting thing about the Phase 1 deal and the political situation is the lack of political pressure from average voters in the United States to reduce those tariffs. Even though we all know that those voters are paying for those tariffs, and they discourage people from buying Chinese goods, of course, it's surprising that there's not as much political pressure from those average voters, even though there is from business. So the Biden administration is not really feeling much pressure to reduce those tariffs in trade negotiations. And we'll just have to see. Catherine Tai has said that she sees that as leverage that she might use at a future time during the negotiations.
And government data does show that Chinese purchase commitments are well below targets. So to what degree is that COVID-related versus other factors?
Well, that is the centerpiece of the Phase 1 deal. The Phase 1 deal did not deal with the real issues in the trade relationship, which is China's industrial policies. And China has fulfilled about 60% of its commitments. That could be COVID related, and I think a lot of people are willing to give China the benefit of the doubt. But there was a commitment to purchase $200 billion worth of goods in 2020 and 2021. And I think that a lot of those goods are goods that China needs, agricultural goods especially. And I think that the American attitude toward ongoing negotiations is really contingent on China meeting that important commitment.
So then as both economies continue to open up, then should we expect to see a bounce in Chinese purchases?
I think we should. As I said, the agricultural goods especially are things that China really needs. And if COVID was a factor in blocking any of those purchases, well, then that's becoming a much reduced factor now. In the United States, as you know, COVID numbers are going down dramatically, and there's really an optimism, a buoyancy in the economy here. And I'm hoping that that will overflow into the trade between the U.S. and China.
And as we know, China and the U.S. do have a lot of differences right now, from the origins of COVID to what's happened in Xinjiang. They do agree on climate cooperation. That's one area. Could trade also end up being a bright spot to really help this relationship?
I think it's a bright spot in the sense that we can maintain communication and keep that on a separate channel and try to go forward and make progress. However, I have to be honest with you, I think that we are farther apart on trade than we were even at the beginning of the trade war, because of the fact that the real root problem is China's industrial policies. China's 14th five-year plan doubles down on subsidies, commitments to state-owned enterprises, and all of those issues that were irritants in the relationship. And on the other side, as I just described, I don't think there's political pressure domestically in the United States to reduce the tariffs. And so going forward, I think we need a political will from our political leaders in order to make progress on trade issues.